Good evening, and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole with David Batdorf. This is episode 3. What came first, the chicken or the Mothman? Tonight, David and I are joined by Mr. Fred Dunn. If anyone has not checked out Fred's artwork, please do so. youtube.com/DREDFUNN Dreadfun. Tonight we're going to talk about the, I guess you could say the validity or the logic or the science or the something behind cryptids or the unknown creatures of the world. Not like the easy ones. The harder ones.
Easy ones are too easy.
Not like, like I say, like I was saying before the show, the Thunderbird, yeah, we can get to the Thunderbird real easy. We can go, there are big birds. There's a possibility that those big birds could have mated and made bigger birds.
We have a fossil record full of gigantic birds.
Yes, so the chance of that being still viable? But what I really wanted to look into are creatures of the fantastical nature. Creatures like the Mothman, like the Jersey Devil, like the Chupacabra.
Chupacabra, man.
I say the Chupacabra very fucking lightly because I don't think that the Chupacabra holds much weight in my opinion as far as a real thing. I could be totally wrong. I'm not a fucking expert on anything, obviously.
Well, come on, how good can goat's blood be?
It's delicious.
It's got to be pretty fucking amazing, I guess, because these things are found everywhere.
Yep.
Well, plus Satanists have been using it for years. But so here's the problem for me with the whole. Let's just start with the Chupacabra. Why not? A Chupacabra is not a hairless coyote. It's not a hairless raccoon, and it's not a hairless squirrel. We've seen all of these things over and over and over again. It's like, okay, if it doesn't have hair, oh my god, it's a gigantic Chupacabra. No, it's a bear that's lost its hair for whatever reason.
Not
a Chupacabra.
A real Chupacabra. The actual Chupacabra, like the I guess the base thing. It's almost like a lizard.
And it's described as being bear-shaped, like not bear size. So, I mean, it's definitely not a tiny dog-sized creature.
It's also described distinctly with having spines. You have to look back to the old, not just people taking pictures of these coyotes with mange and whatnot, but thinking back to the original stories. And there is an original story. I'm going to forget everything that we're going to talk about because I've come directly in from work and taking care of the child. So now I'm here. So, but in the original stories, this is almost a humanoid creature, lizard-like with spines running down the back end of it, not a coyote.
No, not at all. Not even close to a coyote.
Does anybody know where that whole dog thing started from on that end at all?
Steve and I have discussed this ad nauseum. Like, how did it go from a lizard-like creature in Puerto Rico to everyone in the southern United States, especially like Texas, I guess, is huge for this. They're finding it's fucking like we were saying, hairless fucking raccoons or hairless coyotes, and all of a sudden it took on this. It's a dog-like, but it's got fangs. Well, no, that's not what the fucking Chupacabra was.
Dog-like, and dogs have fangs. Remember that?
Yep.
So
The interesting thing to me is, like, if somebody actually was interested in this topic and wanted to go further, because I like to throw these things out there and then not do it and then see if it shows up somewhere else, but would be interesting with the potential climate and habitat changes if sarcoptic mange, which is what causes this hairlessness in most of these animals, the sarcoptic mange was on the rise and documented for the last 20 years, and that would definitely show why we're seeing more not chupacabras on pictures with the name Chupacabra below it.
but here's the thing.
Seems a lot more.
How do we get a Chupacabra? Like how?
Well,
like okay, there's this creature that they claim they see. It has spines. It is the shape, as like Fred was saying, like roughly the shape of a bear. It's very lizard-like. How the fuck do we get that?
So here's the interesting thing about some of these cryptid stories and how some of them have been taken and just, I mean, totally run with. I'm going uber skeptic on this episode, by the way. Like, call me an asshole because I do a Bigfoot podcast. But like, I'm going uber skeptical on this. But you have a sighting that very well could have been something like a mangy coyote, something really odd, something that didn't make any sense, and take that into, I don't know, you see all the documentaries and they have these like dual puncture marks and all these weird things about them, but it doesn't, the correlation is not really there for me, and so you see this thing and you describe it in a particular way, it gets printed in the newspaper, that's just problem number A, and then all of a sudden this image of what was described, probably exactly quoted as the person said it, well, it was roughly the shape of a bear and it looked a little bit lizard-ish in the dark when it was eating my goat.
I'm taken to, not to go off the Chupacabra subject, but I'm taken to a report that was made here in Maine that was, I think, found to be a hoax, and that's the Turner, Maine Bigfoot video. And the Bangor Daily News picked this up, and the gentleman that had done the quote-unquote investigation, and I fucking say that loosely, was quoted in that paper as saying, this is the closest video that we have since the Patterson-Gimlin footage.
Yeah.
And that's what fucking happens.
Well, do they mean like closest in proximity to the camera lens, or but not necessarily
I don't know exactly, but that was the quote in the Bangor Daily News.
Thrown around a lot. This is the most high-definition picture we have of a Chupacabra that's actually a coyote with sarcoptic mange.
Right, and that's the thing. They get these things, they print them, and the internet goes fucking wild.
I mean, present company not excluded, but
hey,
we
fuck, I go
to
wild.
take these things on. Hey, that's kind of what we do.
Gotta check it out.
And then Fred draws them all. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, but that's what's so intriguing to me. And we'll get into the other cryptids too. But like, it is a story like the Chupacabra. Where did it come from? What is the true story behind that? How it grew into this bigger cultural phenomenon, and then ended up at mangy coyote.
And ultimately,
that whole journey is interesting to me.
But ultimately, people think that it came from the movie Species. That it was just that a woman.
The Chupacabra was.
That's seriously that
attractive.
The original story is, and I did this not that long ago, is that a woman saw the movie Species down in Puerto Rico. I do believe it was. And after that, she saw this thing, and it was very similar. What she described was so very similar to what she saw in that movie. And that's where the story comes from, is that original sighting. And that's where
Maybe
we get
that. All these cryptids come from.
from Species. It was really a horrible fucking horror / science fiction movie, Fred.
Yeah.
Well,
I thought it was good.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that movie was as misleading as like for like a teenaged horny little man as like thinking about relations with lesbians. It's like, no, they're not interested in me. No, she's not. There's no happy ending in Species.
Yeah, no, they eat you.
Murder. Yeah,
the babies feed on you at the end. So no, but I'm taken to another movie, and I can't think of the movie right now. Oh shit, Splice. Have you ever seen Splice with Adrian Brody?
Yes,
where they do genetic manipulation, and they make a creature. And this,
and it starts out female, and I don't want to give away any spoilers.
No, I will spoil the fuck out of it. It starts out female and goes male, and it fucks everybody.
Yeah, like a big giant winged monster.
Yeah, so and this is where I have the problem with cryptozoology and with cryptids. I love cryptozoology. I love cryptids. I fucking love the Mothman. Okay, but let's go to the Mothman. How the fuck do you get a Mothman? Logically, evolution.
What is a Mothman?
Yeah, what the fuck is it? How do we get there? Like, is it even fucking possible?
Chupacabra makes sense. It's obviously going to be a mammal because it's got like a torso and 2 arms and 2 legs and a head and blah 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 blah. It's your distinct, like, or I guess lizard mammal, something that was related at least to the dinosaurs or whatnot. Mothman, however, and other things like Jersey Devil, where there's this like superfluous set of wings. Right.
Yeah, it don't really make sense.
It only if it is a true insect, but then are the witnesses either anthropomorphizing a gigantic moth, or are they just totally making it up? Because there's no such thing as a Mothman. But there have been, and again, like I said, there are fossils and like there's remains of gigantic moths. We know that they got super huge. The times where other things were super huge, that's great, but how do you justify? And this is another thing about cryptozoology, like, and we talk about bear shaped is one thing, and then we talk about, oh well, this person was describing what she saw in Species. There's this humanoid aspect to most cryptids,
right,
or land-based cryptids, like that is just through and through, because, well, when you don't know what to make of it, do your eyes just tell you that it's a human or it's a man-like thing because that makes the most sense to you at the time, or are you making up the superfluous body parts? Like, okay, well, if it's a mammal, then it has an option to have wings. We have bats, and we have other things that can have wings, but those, and Fred, you're the perfect person to talk about this. When you're drawing a body, it has certain things that go on with it. I mean, how do you cope with? I mean, you've drawn things with wings, arms, and legs. How do you cope with that? And there's a total like suspension of disbelief, is there not?
Well, yeah, that's dragons come into that. You have to deal with the fact, well, this creature is very, very large, and it's got wings that for a fact visually cannot sustain the weight. Does it have an air bladder? Is it taking in air to lighten itself? Hollow bones, all that stuff. And same thing with the Mothman. And the thing that when I was trying to conceptualize how to draw him, are his appendages attached to the wings, like his forelimbs? Are they part of the wings, which would mean a mammal that has evolved here on Earth? Or is it arms, legs, and a fifth and a sixth appendage? It's tough. You have to try to make it fit. So, I mean, you could ideally give it the extra wings, but I mean, it wouldn't be something that would fit evolutionarily on this planet, I guess. So, and that's the thing with like a Chupacabra and the other ones. They're all like gussied up tetrapods or humanoids. They have the 4 limbs. They're either bipedal or they're quadrupedal. It's an odd blend.
You touched on the word tetrapod. I mean, that's what there's like the tetrapod body plan, and then there's the orthograde body plan, which includes chimpanzees and gorillas, like that upright body plan that we have, right? So it's like, apes have this orthograde body plan, which is what we see a lot of times, and that's interesting. But because evolutionarily, you have to either espouse that to be an ape because of that, or like you said, something not of this planet.
Hey, I've seen flying monkeys, David. I saw The Wizard of Oz, son.
Monkeys.
I think, but I mean, you have these options, and what nature does, and when something is unnatural like that, and people are witnessing it, my question first is, how do they explain it? And then the second question that is the most interesting to me is, how does popular culture not even just explain it, but continue to espouse all of these things to this creature, and it becomes like this great amalgamation of like perfect creature, monster. It's our fears in these cryptids. It's not right. It's not human. It's not. Of course, it's not human. It's not a human. But it's not even of this world, and that's what's so fascinating about it. My question, though, is, was the Chupacabra, like, not just a misidentification of something that we know? Like, it doesn't have to be like a mangy coyote. It doesn't have to be a mangy raccoon. Was it something that, like, it's like playing telephone in grade school, right? You whisper into your neighbor's ear, and as you go around, the message comes out different on the end. That's what we have to deal with a lot of times in this cryptid thing. And not to talk about Bigfoot, because I do a Bigfoot podcast, and I want to talk about Bigfoot on my not Bigfoot podcasts, right? But this is what happens with like this interdimensional aspect of Bigfoot, is it goes into this.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, David.
This small pocket, and then all of a sudden it comes out where it can speak into your mind, and it can shift into dimensions, and does all this, fantastical stuff, when it doesn't have to do that to exist.
Right, but here's the thing. With a lot of these things, and Bigfoot excluded, because as far as I'm concerned, Bigfoot is something that could actually evolutionarily exist. Okay,
it's the thing that makes the most sense. I'm down with
Bigfoot,
with the long shaggy brown.
Put it up there with Loch Ness and those guys.
I was fucking talking like Steve there for a minute. I almost said Bugfoot. Bigfoot, and like the Loch Ness monster. I have a renewed kind of interest in the Loch Ness monster after talking with Jay Cooney about a couple of things.
I love that kid.
Great kid. Hopefully we can get him on the podcast again sometime soon. I believe he's hog hunting at present.
Nice.
I saw some post about that. But anyway, I have a renewed interest there. That's also something that could very well have come about through evolution. Or, there's something that we can relate to that in the evolutionary tree, or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Well, there's some interesting stories like the Thunderbird and other things that could be a relic population that survived in a story, that survived in, survived through the Native American lore. And there's a couple things in this area that I'm thinking, like, man, with the way that they describe that, it could be like a really gigantic vulture, that's feeding on human carrion. Maybe you're already dead. Maybe it wasn't eating you alive. Maybe it was eating you dead, and it was huge, and that's frightening. But, like the relic populations of something that Western science, and
have you ever seen those eagles that fucking snatch monkeys out of trees?
The harpies?
Yeah, those harpy ones.
Those motherfuckers are huge. And they just fly down and snatch monkeys out of the tops of fucking trees. Now, recently here in Maine, we've had a resurgence of the bald eagle. And
that's a big bird,
we're seeing them, I've seen them around here quite a bit. There's a couple that are nesting over a couple roads over from me, and when we're driving in town, every once in a while we'll see it. Yeah, and that's a big fucking bird. And I think sometimes,
but if you're talking about the condor, California king condor or whatever it is, where you put it next to the fossils of the giant vulture. Basically, I'm not remembering what the name is right now. Giant vulture. It's a third the wingspan of this other thing. I mean, that's your freaking Thunderbird right there. You're like,
oh yeah, absolutely
wingspan. But was that we have fossils, but was that a viable thing to
or was the
terror into
Thunderbird
the hearts of
something
men?
somewhere in between? You know, that's the question there. But like, you know, like we were saying, that those things, Bigfoot, the Thunderbird, the Loch Ness Monster, those are things that are, to me, they're viable. It's a viable thing. Then you go, then somebody says, okay, Chris, what about the Michigan Dogman? And then I go, the fuck?
Yeah.
so here's exactly what I was the point I was trying to make earlier, where you take a cryptid, you know, like, are you talking werewolf? Are you talking a Bigfoot dog hybrid? What are you talking? But it's anthropomorphic. You've made this cryptid a human, which makes it even harder to fit into evolution. And there's people that are going to be like, well, evolution hasn't been proven, blah blah blah. Okay, no, it like where you either have this body plan or you have that body plan. I don't even I don't care if you know there was a spiritual creator that dropped us all out of the sky. He decided that some of us were going to have this body plan and some of us were going to have that body plan, and a snout isn't so much in our body plan. You have like one-offs, like the baboon is about as far as you get, and then like the Michigan Dogman, or what is it? I'm forgetting the one, the famous where they're like, it's got a baboon snout, and I don't even see the baboon snout in that photo, but
I believe I remember the one that you're talking about, but I can't place it either, David.
It's gonna come to me after we go off air. But anyway, it's the way that you look at things, the way that you like approach things. I think that unfortunately, like, I'm a huge proponent. Bigfoot being misidentified as a bear is not probably a realistic thing, right? So you see a bear, and everybody knows what a bear looks like. It's got ears on the top of its head. It's got a long snout. It's a big roly-poly thing, and you want to avoid it. You know what a bear looks like.
And a bear has a certain way about it. It has a certain gait. I've seen bears many times. I've seen small bears. I've seen big bears. They tend to waddle. They're not good on their feet, as far as what I mean by that, on 2 feet.
Like 2 feet, yeah.
You know,
there are exceptions, but a general rule, yeah.
Yeah, and and there's a certain way about them. So if you see a bear and you know what a bear is, you're going to identify that as a bear.
Yeah. However, if you're really into the subject of Bigfoot, Dogman, all this other stuff,
call it one of those.
That is a more likely, like,
you might come across a campsite and think Bigfoot attack.
Well, you might have just saw, you might have just seen a bear, right? And that's not a fair assessment. It's like, no, you might have just seen a gorilla, but that doesn't make any sense. So what the hell did you see? But the Dogman thing to me, like, ears on top of the head, long snout, big freaking creature. Michigan.
Hey, it's an American werewolf in America, David.
No, I think a lot of this is, it goes back to, you guys were talking about the game telephone, broken telephone, we call it up here. And I find, like, I work with kids, and there's always at least one kid in the group, and maybe this is what it's like in these cryptic communities, but there's always one kid in the group that, even though they hear the story, or they hear the phrase that the other kid's saying, they still change it around just a little bit, and they do it consciously, and it ends up wrecking it all the way down the line successively. I don't know if that's the case.
Especially once that kid always knows how this game works, and they change one word, and make it seem as it changes everything afterwards. That's how cryptozoology has proceeded, like, for years and years and years. there will be a great article that makes sense in the Pacific Northwest, Puget Sound area, Sasquatch doing something, you know, early 1900s, and then somebody will take that and mash it together with something else and say something, and then that becomes gospel. It's really weird how that works.
See, and like you, I find that almost as fascinating as following the cryptids and trying to find out if they're real. It's like watching the individuals that are passionate about it and trying, you know what I mean? Like you guys were alluding to, you know, if a person lives in Michigan, they're more than likely going to see the Dogman. And is that because they are seeing the actual Dogman, or are they looking for the Dogman because they live in Michigan? Like, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Then again, I mean, cryptozoology isn't exactly normal, so.
And that's an underlying theme in cryptozoology and in ufology. There is this you've attacked us. It's a cultish type of a mentality. People rally around evidence like it is the holy fucking grail. And
you find people, instead of supporting the evidence, they're trying to support the people.
Right. And in the end, that does us no good as far as research is concerned in these areas.
We end up with mangy coyotes thinking they're chupacabras.
Chupacabra. I think, you know, I should just step out of that, because that's what we do on our podcast a lot, is we call out BS where BS needs to be called out, and we get a lot of flack for it. I don't get as much as Jeffrey gets, because he's a little bit more vocal about his opinions.
Yeah, and if anybody hasn't checked out David's other podcast with Jeff that he does, the Squatchers Lounge podcast, I think you can check that out. Is it S Lounge Podcast on YouTube?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on Facebook and here and there and everywhere. But yeah, but that's exactly what happens, is that, you know, we find a recent claim that doesn't make any sense. We question it and we get flack, and then 2 months later it turns out it was all a ruse, or there was a major problem. And what's interesting, like doing these podcasts, is trying to figure out what to call out and what not to call out, because there's so much of it, A, and B, we don't want to start the investigations into these sort of things. We just sort of want to be the news source and give our opinions.
Well, I mean, when I started doing this, not this show, not the Down the Rabbit Hole, the Fortean Slip, the channel itself, the first person that I had spoken to about doing a show was Steve Alcorn. And the third person was, of course, Matt, which was the original show. But when I first started, I had said to Steve, you know, 90-something% of this, and I can't remember what I had said at that point in time. You know, 90-something% of all this is bullshit. It's fucking horse shit. And we're force-fed all of this quote-unquote evidence from people all the time. It isn't just, you know, every once in a while. It's all the time. Hey, I found this Bigfoot scat. Or, hey, I found this hair. Or, you know, forget about Bigfoot. You know, hey, I found this Chupacabra. Or whatever. And it's, you know, oh, there's a picture of the Loch Ness Monster on fucking Google Maps. Yeah, okay. It's all, you know, 90-something% of it is horseshit. And then you get this little tiny percentage of stuff that could be something. You know, and I'm very interested. Steve was always very interested. Matt's very interested. You guys are very interested. But the problem is that it's the other 90-something%. And like Steve and I have gotten to the point now where we're at 99. We're like, it's 99% bullshit. Yeah. There's 1% of good stuff that comes out.
Going through the whole process of being on the Squatchers Lounge podcast, I am less convinced than ever that Bigfoot is an extant ape or whatnot. What keeps me hanging on is, like, you know, like stories from a good, like, you know, my good friend Jeff and our good friend Matt and things like that are compelling to me, that keep me interested. But on the other side, there's the interesting thing to me is it's the story. Like, okay, so full disclosure, weird personal David Batdorf moment right here. So my father gives me no end of shit for being interested in the Bigfoot thing, right? Swears up and down on 2 occasions has seen UFOs. My grandmother, who told me when I was 7 years old, because of the beliefs, and she was trying to figure out how to put it, because of the beliefs of the Lummi native tribe, and I think I know what she meant now, but they believe that Sasquatch was another form of people. And they traded with them, and they did a lot of things, and all of, but it's hard. We don't see them, so it's hard to accept. Okay, she also swears up and down and would support on Arrested Soul, like the pinniped theory from Jay Cooney, has seen Ogopogo. So this is my family, right? Like, so where am I?
Hey.
I'm sitting here doing a podcast about cryptids with you assholes because of my family.
And hey, we've all got some, in some way, some vested interest in this. For some reason or other. Like, for me, it's, I've never seen Bigfoot, or I've never seen anything like that. I did see what I would consider to be a UFO at one point in time. I've told the story on the show. To me, it was a UFO. Whether or not it was something else that I can't identify, it was it's unidentified.
It's an unidentified flying.
Right. It was a silent object in the sky above my head that should have been making noise. Okay? That's all I can tell you. And I don't run around and say that was an alien spaceship. You will never
piloted by the Gray.
You will never hear me say that ever. I will tell the story as as it unfolded to me, and I will give it to you. But you'll never hear me embellish it, because I have no reason to. I want to know the truth about it as much as everyone else. When it comes to those subjects. But when it comes to this stuff, like I was saying before, there's this cult of mentality where people they're crazy and fanatical about their cryptid or their alien story or their UFO story or whatever it may be. And it becomes kind of consuming.
I mean, I think anybody who's looked into this topic has had that dark period where it does become consuming, and you start to argue your ideas and your this and then your that, and then at some point you're like, well, shit, I'm just going to make a podcast. No, but like, basically you're like, it doesn't really matter. The most hilarious thing to me was when I started watching, like early on in my interest in this, I started watching Bigfooters argue about Bigfoot. I'm like, no, here's my idea. I'm going to leave it here like a steaming pile of dog crap on the table and walk away. And I share with you my steaming pile of dog crap, right? Like, that's it. You don't have to tell me I'm wrong, because you don't know if you're right. I mean, I could argue against that day in and day out, and I did for a long time, and it's exhausting, and it's not worth your time. Bring home the Chupacabra.
Right, and a lot of times I think, especially with these other cryptids, which, hey, I love a good Mothman story. I like the Indrid Cole aspect of the Mothman story. I love the Harbinger of Doom idea. I love that shit. I do. Like, I want to read about it.
I still find it confusing.
Right, but do I buy into it? Yep. That's the hard part, is the buying into it. So my thing is,
let's go back to comic book art. Like, I find graphic novels really confusing a lot of times too.
Yep.
But there awesome.
Yep.
Right. And that's the thing. You get sucked into this because it's a cool story. You wanna know more. You want to understand it. But you get into this, and this is the turn that you have to take. You have to say that A, these creatures are flesh and blood creatures that somehow got here through the evolutionary chain. Or they're a supernatural being. Or they're aliens. Or they're aliens' pets.
See, and it's tough because like we all come from like different. Like I mean, personally, like the human evolution thing. That's what appeals to me. Like, are they an offshoot of Neanderthals or something like that? Again, like we were talking with Nessie or Loch Ness Monster. Is it a plesiosaur or is it really just a big carp? Or those things are interesting, and it's unfortunate when they sort of get sidetracked and taken away by people that have. I don't want to say hidden agendas because I don't think they're that sophisticated, but they have an agenda that is more about promoting themselves and validating their research. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there doing great research on the Chupacabra and the Mothman, but I mean, until we start getting some, evidence of some kind.
So here there was an interesting. It was a book by what's his name, Lyle. Oh yeah, it was Lyle Blackburn who was doing this like sort of like hominid cryptids, and he was talking about the difference between Bigfoot, lizard man, dogman, and basically his consensus, which I totally agree with, was it's either the same thing described three ways,
Yep.
or it's one thing and two bullshits, or like
See, and the thing is, like, I've actually, like, I've been fortunate enough on occasion to actually take eyewitness testimony of, I know we didn't want to talk too much about Bigfoot, but of an encounter, and it's interesting because I find that the minutia of their details, personally, I find I'm not necessarily hard to believe, but I wonder how they got to that conclusion, because in the instance they're usually only seeing whatever it is for a split second, a few seconds, and they're describing things like the whites of the eyes and the shape of the teeth. And for me, I mean, I had an incident with a black sheepdog that I thought was, I think I told Chris, I thought it was a black bear. Realized 10 minutes later after I ran off crying that it was just it was a dog. But I saw four limbs, I saw black, I saw big, I thought, black bear, run.
Which is what you would do in the moment.
Right. And I think a lot of times, like, I'm not saying people are seeing bears, but I mean, again, if you're going into the woods to have a good afternoon and you don't know anything about Bigfoot and you have an encounter, or if you're in like New Mexico and you've never heard of Chupacabra and you have an encounter, I mean, and you don't know what the beast is and you're not influenced, like if either one of us, I think we're in those situations, we might be able to draw on a larger influence. But again, it's unfortunate we can't know if that person already had an understanding of what it was that they saw. We all kind of know what Bigfoot looks like, so could be just a big tree that they think is Bigfoot for all I know.
Yeah,
a lot of times it is.
Eyewitness testimony is really hard to go by, and we know that.
It is, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at. It's not that I don't believe them. I do believe them, but I mean, usually by the time I get there, they've already told this story to relatives, to friends, to family, to a lot of people, and it's become a well-rehearsed thing, and not as organic. And again,
David and I, recently went to the Brown property in Washington, and David and I have made no bones about the fact that we're not on board, so to speak. Like, hey, I'm not saying that Jonathan Brown and Sarah Brown are not telling me the truth. I'm not saying that their thermal video is not a Bigfoot.
Yep.
But I have questions. And I think the questions that I have haven't been answered. And we were talking about, after we went there, we did a podcast with Jeff, and I came on their podcast. And I said, hey, yeah, I heard those sounds. But Occam's razor tells me those sounds could have been people.
You have to go to that. Well, we had the conversation with John the next day. We were walking through the field, and I was like, don't, if I keep asking questions and if I seem skeptical, it's because I am. That's how I am. But don't, like,
I'm not doing it to say that you're a bullshit artist.
Yeah, don't. I'm not saying you're a liar. Like, that'll bear out eventually. It does for everyone. Like, I'm not saying you're a liar. I'm saying that I need, what did I say? Like, quote David Batdorf, I need Bigfoot to cock slap me on the forehead and say, hey, dude, I'm real.
Well, like I said on your show.
I know how to draw. That could be an image.
Like I said on your show, David.
Not safe for work.
I have not seen a video of a Bigfoot making a Bigfoot call. And unless I see the Bigfoot standing there making the noise, I'm never going to associate Bigfoot calls with Bigfoot.
It's really difficult because you've heard there's this whole gamut of Bigfoot calls. All these things people pull down. Some of them are from movies or movie props or like, sirens and other things like that played in particular ways as though to seem creepy.
Mm-hmm.
I watched an orangutan.
Hashtag plug Valley of the Sasquatch. Definitely the Sasquatch howl was an effect. Right, it's not an actual Sasquatch howl, and even if it was from an actual Sasquatch howl, they slowed it down because I think they took the Snohomish Sasquatch howl and slowed it down, right? Or they tried to recreate it somehow. But yeah, that's what we have, and that's what cryptids are, is a question. So what do you what do you do? Do you have to have a body every single time? I don't think so, especially if it's covered in hair, because hairs catch on things and they come out. But I think there's a lot of, so you go through Loch Ness and you look at the topography underneath the water on one day with a one pass, and you say, well, Loch Ness doesn't exist. Well, that's not satisfactory. That's not scientific as much as Dr. Sykes saying that there's a relic polar bear living in the Himalayas is not scientific because it doesn't, there was not enough study done on that. It was like, okay, well, we'll pass this one thing from this one area. You don't even have a chain of custody saying that it truly came from this area.
I think
could have been anywhere.
I think this mentality, David, and I think a lot of it has to do with something that I've brought up many times before. One of my favorite shows that brought cryptozoology right out to the forefront, I thought, at its peak when it came out, was Monster Quest. You got this show, comes out, we're going to look into all of these.
Fantastic show, yeah.
We're going to look into all these
I would
cryptids.
Totally say Monster Quest, yeah.
And they...
Monster Quest was what happened to me.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got Monster Quest, and they go out into the woods, and I've said this many, many times, and it's not just for Bigfoot. It was for everything. They would go out for a few days, and then they come back, and this is our evidence, and we're going to look over the evidence. When we get back, we'll look at the evidence that they collected in a matter of 2 days in the woods. Like, what is that? What kind of fucking research is that? If wildlife biologists go out or were to go out to study Bigfoot, would they be out in the woods for 2 days?
Nope.
So they might, like, it depends. Like contiguous days, 48 hours over the course of like a week. Yeah, probably. But they're doing that every week. But they're leaving behind either hair snares or camera traps with bait. But we don't even know what to bait a Sasquatch in. Like,
right.
Fish guts, strawberries, or elk innards. You know, like come on, we don't
Not
know.
Snickers bars?
Yeah, we don't know vegetarian, omnivore. We really don't know.
But so like that's the whole thing. Like what do you do for the next step? And the other thing, again, in this Lyle Blackburn book, I didn't read the book. I listened to an interview with him. He was talking about the difference between the lizard man and the dog man and Bigfoot is that everybody who's looking for the dog man is also looking for Bigfoot. Nobody's looking for the Mothman. Nobody's looking for the lizard man. Nobody's looking for Slender Man, you know, like all these other things. Like you listed like a bunch of things. Like they're all looking for the same thing, and that is interesting, if not compelling, right? That we're all kind of looking for this big, hairy hominid creature. It's got the orthograde body plan. Like nobody proposes to know about this, creature at all. So they're all looking for kind of the same thing. But the one-offs, people aren't really out there looking for on a regular basis, unless it's maybe Bob Dominguez, Chupacabra Hunter.
The one and only.
He doesn't think about the Chupacabra, David. He does think about Bigfoot with a glowing penis, though. which is
And a trench coat, isn't it?
So his penis glows when he thinks about Bigfoot?
Bob's penis glows.
No. Bob told a story that and I'll use this to end our little discussion because this is where the rails come off. Back in the beginning when we first started the show, Steve couldn't do the show once, so we had Bob fill in. And Bob told a story about a woman who said that Bigfoot would come down, I want to say out of the hills or whatever mountains, I don't fucking know. And that when he came down, he would have an erection and it glowed. And a researcher told Bob that, well, there are mushrooms and different things that have phosphorescence and yeah.
Deep down in that mushroom.
Yeah.
The Bigfoot balls swang. Yes, they do.
This has been episode 3 of Down the Rabbit Hole with David Batdorf. We went way off the rails. If you like this shit...
I said no Bigfoot. No Bigfoot!
And of course we talked about Bigfoot. If you like this shit, hit the like button. If you don't, hit the thumbs down button. Leave a comment. Share it. Subscribe. Do fucking all that shit. I appreciate it. It makes me happy. I giggle a lot.
I've heard him giggle.
Yes. Many, many, many times.